Michigan beating Ohio State in recruiting? Can it be? We will discuss here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all being here for Buckeyes Live. We come your way each and every Wednesday. We've got schedules to coordinate, of course, so therefore, please subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, but typically Wednesday morning. We got, of course, Steve Hellwagon here from Bucknuts 247 Sports right next to me, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Huddle. Get to his podcast, Buckeye Weekly, and also right here on YouTube, it's a College Football Playbook. Now, come on, Tony, College Football Playbook for the nerds like me, that's intriguing. So get on over there, College Football Playbook. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing well.
Good. Doing good.
You guys know better than I do that there is panic running through Ohio State, Buckeye Nation. I heard the news yesterday, and immediately in a non-related live stream, there was all sorts of talk and chest beating and pumping from Michigan fans and Ohio State fans. Worried. One Jordan Marshall, running back out of Cincinnati Moeller, has chosen Michigan. He is a hard commit. He is not the only one. We've got a couple interior linemen earlier in the recruiting process for the 24 cycle who have chosen Michigan. Of course, they've not signed. That doesn't happen until December, and things happen. But Steve, we'll start with you. Whether you want to take the granular or the big picture view on this one, Ohio State versus Michigan recruiting.
Well, yeah, I think the news came down. It was a bit of a shock yesterday afternoon. I don't know that this was forewarned for anybody that he was ready to pop, or that it was going to be Michigan. I think that was a big shocker and a surprise, I think, to a lot of people. I think people down in Cincinnati felt that Ohio State was the team to beat. And, as you have it right there, number 91 national overall player, number 7 running back, he is, one of the top players in Ohio for the 2024 class. So, yeah, this is quite a get for Jim Harbaugh. It sounds like Mike Hart, the running backs coach for Michigan, really did a great job recruiting Marshall. I'm not sure that this is an indictment of Tony Alford, although with the knee-jerk reaction of fans, every action must have a commensurate reaction in the other direction 10 times as bad. So, I don't know that this is the referendum on Tony Alford that everyone thinks it might be. Ohio State still got some pretty good running backs in their own right, and I don't think that this is the end of the world. But obviously, the success that Blake Corum had at running back for Michigan this past year, Hassan Haskins the year before, Michigan's committed to running the football, obviously. And I think that may have played a part. Not to say that Ohio State isn't committed to running it, because I think that's still a major tenet of the Ohio State offense, no doubt, is to establish the run every game, every opponent that they play against. And some games they're successful, and then at the end of the season, when you have no running backs left because you've beat them all up, you're not quite as successful. So I don't know. I don't look at it as the end of the world, but at the same time, it is definitely notable. A guy Ohio State had offered, and a guy Ohio State wanted. Unlike the 2 linemen that you had referenced, I don't believe Ohio State had offered either of them, but they definitely offered Jordan Marshall. So this one does kind of cut across the bow a little bit.
Yeah, I think the timing was a surprise, but our Alex Gleitman on Buckeye Huddle had mentioned recently that it was looking like Michigan for Jordan Marshall. And the thing is, I can't really blame him when you look at what Michigan has done running the ball. They could be losing both of their top guys after this season, so that he could be running into a situation as a true freshman competing for a starting job. If Donovan Edwards decides to leave after this year, or obviously Blake Corum is gone, but either way, he's being set up to possibly start his first or second year. So that's enticing. And as Steve said, with the way they've run it with Haskins and Corum both, like they will wear a guy down. They will, if you want to run the ball 30 times, if you have the ability to carry it, they will give it to you. And you look at what Ohio State has coming back. They just had a true freshman running back rush for 500 yards last year. So like he's going to be part of that future. And I think it's a easier, quicker path to playing time at Michigan, but also a quicker path to a lot of work. And that's something that, some running backs like. And I know you posted his stats. Didn't look like he had, I don't know if he was injured this past year or what, but so be interesting to see how he does there. And Ohio State's still in on plenty of running backs. I guess they're heating up with one of the nation's best, and I believe James Peoples out of San Antonio, Texas, the number 5 running back, top 100 player. I know there's some buzz there, and there's still another Ohio kid that Ohio State is very much in on in the running back position as well. So I think they'll still end up with the 2 that they want to. They'll end up with 2. They should. But Tony Alford missing out on running backs last year, and then completely missing out on running backs last year in the 2023 class, and then to have this start, it's not nothing. I think it's a little bit of a concern, but I think it's not time for panic yet until you see other Ohio kids that Ohio State wants, like Aaron Scott at corner and Bryce West at Cleveland Glenville corner. Like if those guys start going to Michigan, then you can really start the panic alarm.
Yeah, I was headed in the same direction as you, Tony, after I posted these numbers to say, well, they wear him down at Michigan in the running back room, but my goodness, he looks like he's pretty fresh. And I don't know what the injury situation could have been in 2023, but only about 40 some carries.
I don't think that's right.
Touchdowns.
It looks
That's
to
what I'm
me
getting from Max Preps.
in
So
the story that I'm looking at here on 24/7 says he was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state as a junior, rushed for 1,951 yards and 30 touchdowns, and caught 19 passes and 4 touchdowns. His junior year would have been this past season, because he's going to be a senior coming up in the fall. So I'm not sure where those numbers came from. Maybe that's from a previous year. I don't know. And not only that, his numbers are on GMC Sports. It's really good. Some of the leagues here in Ohio, the big one in Dayton, the big public school league in Cincinnati, and the Catholic league in Cincinnati, those 3 in particular, somebody got all those people involved at each of those schools and posting their stats game by game. So GMC Sports would have his exact stats for every year that he's ever played on the varsity at Moeller. So down to game by game. I mean, it's crazy. I wish every high school in the country had the same web outfit that set up those 3 leagues, because we'd be a much better world with that.
well, thank you for checking me. I think Max Preps gave up after 3 games, because that looks like about 14 carries per game. It's the 2022/23 season, so that is last season in which I pulled those stats, but they've got 3 games played.
It's a great resource and everything. I don't understand why we can't get a national edict that everybody posts their stuff on there. I don't get it. They have the scores usually, but that's about it. So yeah, it'd be nice if
I just
brought in.
I just checked GMC Sports, but Moeller is not part of the GMC, so they're not listed.
Oh, not GMC. It's GCL. I apologize.
Okay.
GCL Sports, Greater Catholic League.
Well, let's check that.
GCL Sports. I got to think the 1951 is legitimate. I don't know how deep Moeller went in the playoffs, because I know Springfield was the team that came out of that area, but they may have gone pretty deep. So,
Couple other recruiting notes. You guys
1951,
referenced this,
sorry.
Steve, you did. Luke Hamilton, interior offensive lineman out of Avon. Ted Hammond out of St. Xavier, Cincinnati. Top 15 players in the state of Ohio, both interior. Well, Hamilton on the offensive side, Hammond on the defensive side. Not interested, Ohio State?
Well, Ohio State had Hamilton in their camp and, didn't offer him. They had other offensive linemen that day, and they did. I mean, but potentially they still might. I mean, you never know. I mean, the kid can't sign until this middle of December, so that's 9 months away. So, I doubt he's going to come to Ohio State's camp. Marshall, I can't imagine Ohio State's going to let up on him. I think they're going to stay after him because he's a really talented player. So I don't know. Michigan throughout its years, their best teams have had Ohio guys that kind of went away from that here in the last 10 years. And really in the first half of the Harbaugh regime really didn't pay Ohio no never mind. But now they're feeling their oats a little bit. And they're like, well, hey, we've got a roadmap. We've got ways. We know how to get the Moeller and Olentangy Orange and Cleveland Glenville. And, Huber Heights Wayne has always been a big Michigan sympathizer bar. And so has Youngstown, one of the ones out there, Harding, or I don't know, one of those schools out there in the Mahoning Valley has always been a big Michigan sympathizer as well. So I don't know.
Ursuline.
Yeah, Ursuline or somebody. We'll see if they can put their tentacles back down in Ohio.
Well, the thing is, also, as you said, Steve, Jim Harbaugh didn't really get into Ohio recruiting in his first few years at Michigan. And he would have been battling Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, was getting
Kentucky,
in there,
Notre Dame,
and Kentucky. And the thing is, remember the satellite camps that they used to do where they would often get commitments from random 2-star kids that they liked at camp rather than really fighting and going after national prospects. And so then they'd have they're top heavy in terms of their recruiting. And then they had to have these bottom guys that shouldn't be playing at Michigan and never ended up playing at Michigan and just occupied roster spots. And so, it was about a few years ago, they finally started to go, maybe it was with the departure of Urban, when, I don't know if that matches up, but when they finally started to get back into Ohio, but it was foolish of them not to stay strong in Ohio and keep working in Ohio, because Michigan's never been anything without Ohio players. And so it's smart of them to get back into it.
What happened to those satellite camps? I forgot about those. Those were just the rage of college football for about 2 years. People pissed at Harbaugh going all over the place to promote Michigan for a couple off seasons, and then they just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, exactly. Because the results weren't there. The return on the investment wasn't there. Other schools started to do it as well. Ohio State was doing it. Like, it was just one of these things that I don't know that he necessarily started it, but when Michigan is doing something, people take notice. But then, like I said, when you're offering 2-star guys, like, none of those guys are going to hit. None of them, I don't think, ever. They may have had like one hit that actually maybe played, but it wasn't. If it was working, they'd still be doing it. I'll say that.
I put together a recruiting comparison a couple months ago, Ohio State versus Michigan during the Harbaugh era, and I'm still looking for the numbers here, but it was about doubled up in regards to Ohio born and bred players on the Michigan roster recruited and signed by Harbaugh was in the 70s or 80s from the 2015 cycle all the way through 2022, and about half as many players from Michigan to Ohio. Of course, Ohio's been a better high school football playing state, but am I correct in saying that gap is closed?
Yeah,
it seems like it has.
I think so. And I think, Ohio, for whatever reason, just hasn't produced maybe as much high-end talent, Ted Ginn Jr. isn't walking through that door, you know what I mean? And Troy Smith and winning the Heisman Trophy and different things. It just, Ohio just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel, and it just doesn't seem like there's that high-end player coming from the state of Ohio, perhaps as it used to. Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks are definitely, Jack Sawyer are exceptions to that rule, but you get beyond those three, and particularly offensive line, Ohio's always produced. I think Luke Montgomery this past year as a freshman now for the Buckeyes. I think he's a guy that national top 50, top 60 guy. So we'll see if he pans out, certainly. But there's been a dearth, I think, of high end talent in the state of Ohio in recent years, and we'll see if and that's manifested itself a little bit on the field for the Buckeyes. They've had to go outside the state of Ohio and had to reach on some guys different places to make up for what Ohio hasn't been given them. I mean, Jim Tressel would sign 25 guys and 12 were from Ohio. If you get Ryan Day to sign more than 6 Ohio guys, it's a national holiday. So, just kind of where it's at.
National holiday or national failure, because they've had to then rely on Ohio kids because they struck out nationally. So it's there's some good and some bad. I know they want to get back to securing the Ohio kids, and losing Jordan Marshall at this point isn't ideal. Just looking at like 24/7's own rankings, there's one Ohio kid in the top 100. The composite has 3, but I think this year's class, next year's class, I believe is decent in Ohio, but at any given point, like how many make or break players are there in Ohio? Not as many as there used to be, but also, back in the day, losing Prescott Burgess was make or break. Sean Crable was make or break. Michigan got those guys, and they never beat Ohio State.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, when those guys
Except
were playing
for
primary
2003.
roles, when they were freshmen, but 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, 10, no. So, it is what it is. I put a little message in our internal chat here. And I know this is basketball, but I think it dovetails into football. The Big Ten got one team into the Sweet 16, and that's not a surprise when you look. Well, first of all, they didn't have a lot of high seeds that you'd expect to win second round matchups anyway. And when Purdue loses, as a 1 seed to Fairleigh Dickinson, one of the biggest upsets in the history of the tournament, obviously that is a big black eye for the Big Ten. But Michigan State, the only team that got out. And as I started crunching numbers, the talent that you put in is commensurate to the product that you get out. And, I crunched some numbers here. In the last 4 years, basketball, the top 50 players in the country from each of the class, so basically 200 guys over the last 4 years, SEC schools got 53 of them, ACC 36, Pac-12 29, then comes the Big Ten at 22. They have 40% of what the SEC got, and you wonder, why are Tennessee and Alabama up there now in college basketball and Ohio State isn't, and other schools? And then the Big 12 at 20. And the usual suspects are the ones, Kentucky's way up there, Duke. Duke had the most of anybody. But, I think this is a trickle-down fact for football that Ohio State has struggled. They've got the number 2 guy right now, Jeremiah Smith, for the 2024 class. But when it comes to those high-end kids and, quote, bidding for those high-end kids in this new era of anything goes NIL, where you have a Syracuse coaching legend, Jim Boeheim, basically saying that the teams he's playing against are buying players, and that could be transfer portal as much as it is high school. I think that there's an edict from the Big Ten that we're not going to buy high school players, and I think that Ohio State isn't competing with Indiana and Michigan State for players. They're competing with Alabama and Georgia and Clemson, who, theoretically are. And, Alabama and Tennessee, to be where they are in basketball, there's only one way that happens, guys, and that's buying players. So, to me, the Big Ten needs to get with the program or just accept the fact it's going to get left behind. And you hate to see that trickle down to football. But if it's the same edict for basketball as it is for football, then you can see why some 11th hour decisions went the wrong way for Ohio State on some high-end football kids last year, because the package just wasn't what it was supposed to be compared to what, Alabama and some of those other schools could offer them.
Yeah, and Ohio State is trying to rectify that by putting some packages together that will just be, I think, a flat rate for anybody coming in, so that there is something, so that they can show them there will be something. But I don't think that's been announced by anybody yet.
To kind of play off of what Steve was talking about, I caught a discussion from the CBS desk after one of the Big Ten's many losses, and it sounded like a conversation from 5 or 10 years ago. So I'm the last one that should be commenting on basketball over the past 10 years, but I was heavy into it before that. And Jay Wright was sticking up for the Big Ten, basically saying there's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten, from about maybe 15 in the country to 60 in the country, but not a lot at the top. And of course, Michigan State's the last Big Ten team to win a national championship in basketball in 2000. But from the time I was watching, which was from the time I was 8 years old until about 10 years ago, of course, the Big Ten did as well as just about anybody, including the ACC, in the tournament, getting teams into the Final Four in particular, but was not able to have that championship team for a long time. And now it seems as though, based on what Steve's telling us, and I don't know what the recruiting was. I know what the results were for a long, long time. I don't know what the recruiting was, but we're in a different world with the NIL, and if, as Steve is pointing out, maybe even those really good teams are going to be difficult to produce if things trend this way. There's going to be a lot of 6 and 8 seeds out of the Big Ten in the tournament.
A buddy of mine sent me. We back in like high school, we were all into high school college basketball recruiting, and that was like a national pastime for us. And he sent me some pictures of one of his old magazines that he had, and the Big Ten is all over those. Like back then, Illinois was landing Deion Thomas and Kendall Gill and all of these national guys, and the Wisconsin was landing national guys. 5-star center Rashard Griffith back in the day. So the Big Ten was all over the place, and I don't know the exact reason, because you say the shift south, with everybody moving south. I mean, these weren't necessarily local players that were sticking around necessarily to play at those states, but Ohio State would do fine, but you had like even like Northwestern with Rex Walters. I mean, they didn't keep him long, but they were able to land. All of these schools were able to land significant players. But then I don't know, a few years later, that was it, and we haven't seen it to that level since. Maybe since the you didn't even have to go to college to go to the NBA. Like once that rule, I don't know when that really became in vogue, but since then, like, I don't know that the Big Ten has really been all that special when it comes to recruiting. They've had some moments with Thad Matta, but that was a lot of Midwest guys.
I was at lunch yesterday with Marcus Hartman, our buddy, and Kevin Noon, who ordinarily is with us. And Marcus works for the Dayton Daily News, and we were talking about how the Big Ten hasn't won a national championship in basketball since 2000. And he's like, Tom Izzo ruined the Big Ten, with his black and blue style of basketball, bludgeoning everybody, blunt force trauma basketball. And it's a style of basketball that the Big Ten seems to be stuck in. And, he did a show yesterday with Dan Patrick talking about how he still loves his job, but he's disillusioned with the industry, with the NIL and the transfer portal. And, the issue is you've got to embrace those things and embrace the churn and and this goes for football just the same. Even though there's a 3-year rule for guys going to the pros, they can still leave after 1 year and go in the transfer portal. I mean, we've seen guys who we thought would compete for jobs like J.K. Johnson at Ohio State football just up and leave for no reason, after 1 year. So, you're and there's some school of thought that Izzo is an obstructionist in terms of paying high school players. He doesn't want to do it, doesn't want to go down that road. And that's become kind of the hard line in the Big Ten, that we don't want to do this. And you don't want to run afoul of Big Ten compliance, which then runs afoul of NCAA compliance. So I don't know what the sweet spot, to borrow a term from our good friend, athletic director Gene Smith, would be. But you can sense the frustration from Ryan Day back on signing day in December. that they're getting straight out bid for key players, that NIL. And Dave Biddle asked him, did you feel like you just didn't have enough ammunition in your holster to land some of these guys? And, he no one will talk on the record about it. No one wants to, rock the boat, so to speak. But there is a sentiment out there that there are schools that are, quote, bending the rules by buying high school players and buying transfers. And, if you're not going to, it's like Notre Dame and that whole thing with, in the late 80s, well, we don't take Prop 48. So there's a subset of athlete we're never going to have. And didn't they make an exception finally with Tony Rice? I think may have been a Prop 48. And it was kind of like, well, that is a self-imposed standard that you've put in. Don't come complaining to me that you can't compete on the field with Ohio State when you've put this self-imposed standard of academic excellence, so to speak, in there that you won't take at-risk students. And the same thing now applies. Don't tell me you can't compete with Alabama and Clemson in football and Georgia anymore just because they're buying players and you can't. So better get the system fixed.
I'll say this before I head off, but remember when Tom Izzo, Ohio State, Michigan State played, and we were waiting for Tom Izzo to come to the post game to tell us how great Chris Holtmann was and the rough state of affairs. But he said coaching isn't as fun as it used to be, and hearing the thoughts that he's holding the Big Ten back. When Urban Meyer came to the Big Ten, it was clear he was going to bring the Big Ten forward or leave it completely behind. Tom Izzo just seems to be, just thinking about it now, it's like he's putting his heels down and because everybody's competing in the Big Ten against Tom Izzo. And when that's your sight, that's what you're shooting for, you're kind of limiting the rest of the game, because Ohio State, when Urban Meyer got here, he set his sights on Alabama. He wasn't worried about anybody in the Big Ten. Here in the Big Ten, you're trying to beat Michigan State. You're trying to win the Big Ten. And meanwhile, like Izzo in his non-conference is playing all of these national programs so that they're ready for the tournament. But like everybody else in the Big Ten is just trying to get past Michigan State. And that style is what it is. And then you get to the tournament and it's official completely different than in the Big Ten, and it's whistled completely differently, and it's a different style of basketball. And don't I could not get rid of Purdue in my bracket quick enough, and I still didn't get rid of them quickly enough. Like I couldn't have them losing to a 9. As soon as I could, I got them out, but not soon enough.
The warning signals were there.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like Matt Painter, based on what you just said about Urban Meyer, is the anti-Urban Meyer in basketball. He's fixated on winning the Big Ten, and then they can't do anything in the tournament. 3 consecutive double-digit seed losses for
He needs
Purdue.
to be fixated on beating a 13 seed or a 14 seed or a 15 seed.
I'm glad I looked up my numbers because I was speaking off the top of my head in regards to Ohio State and Michigan recruits from and signees from the 2 states since Harbaugh took over. So I was way off terms of the top of my head. Ohio State, 65 in-state players, only 6 from Michigan. Michigan, 18 Ohio players, 37 from Michigan. So it's a 10-1 on the Ohio State side in-state, and it's only a 2-1 Michigan in-state.
Yeah, their population per capita, I mean, it's not football's a big deal, but it's not quite as big a deal high school wise in Michigan as it is in Ohio. Never has been, never will be. And, it's just the way it is.
I think it's much more detrimental to Michigan when Ohio State takes a Michigan player than because there are less of them. So if you're taking your power, if there's 7-8 guys in Michigan any given year that could be in the top of the Power 5, and if Ohio State is taking one of those, that's more detrimental than Michigan coming in and taking one of Ohio's, 20 Power 5 guys. But if Michigan continues to do it year after year and they're getting 2 or 3, then obviously that's not what Ohio State wants. But I got to head out, heading over to campus for Ohio State's Pro Day. So I'll say goodbye now, and I'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. Steve, no pro day for you?
No, I'm going, but it's kind of an all-day thing, so I'm going to go over here in a little while. It
Great.
runs like 11:30 to 3, something like that. So NFL Network Plus is going to stream it online for anybody who wants to watch it. And my guess is if they have any live shows during that time, they'll cut in maybe with some highlights or interviews or whatever. But 30 of the 32 teams will be represented, and somebody published that Carolina, which has the number 1 pick, is sending 100 people from their front office in to assess CJ Stroud. My dogs are going nuts. I'm going to let them out real quick. So tap dance for a minute, and I'll be right back.
We'll do our best. All right. Every Wednesday, folks, right here at the Voice of College Football. Also want to let everyone know that we do have a link to Fanatics. So most of you are aware of how great the Fanatics brand is. And we've got a link that I've left in the live chat. So please check it out. And if you shop Fanatics, then please use the link, and I've dropped it back in the chat. Please use, much like Amazon. You shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide in all the videos at the top of the description section. We will do the same with Fanatics to help grow and build the channel. Steve's back. So it was Brass Tacks who posted, either as just a fun coincidence, fun fact, or maybe he's making a point that the common denominator between Ryan Day and John Cooper is that they're not from Ohio. Do you think that means anything at all?
I don't know. I mean, no, I really don't. I think in Cooper's case, I mean, Michigan had a really good program, in the 90s, 80s and 90s. And, they won a national championship in 97, if my memory, at least half of a national championship in 97. So, Michigan was best in class for some of the time that he was the head coach. And certainly so was Ohio State, even though he never won the national championship. He was in the top 5, probably 4 or 5 of those years. So, I mean, it was the best of college football, going against one another, and Michigan just came out on top. And I think this kind of same thing applies. I mean, Ohio State very well could have won the national championship last year without beating Michigan. If they beat Georgia and go on and beat TCU, they're the national champions without beating Michigan, which is kind of unheard of, kind of amazing when you think about it. And, we're moving into an era. I argue with people on our message board all the time. We've got one guy who's a bit of a troll on our message board, comes in, and Ryan Day is soft. His teams are soft. He's lost 2 straight to Michigan. We get embarrassed by our rival. And, I'm like, dude, it's not 1974 anymore. That game still has tremendous significance. But when we move, when they did so well in the rest of their schedule that the committee put them in the playoff anyway, despite losing to Michigan, and they very nearly ran out of there with the national championship, then, kind of your upsettedness is kind of hollow to me. You know what I mean? And moreover, we're going to a case now where you can win the national championship, get into the playoff as a 10-11 seed with 2 or 3 losses going forward, and somehow win 4 or 5 games and win the national championship in the playoff. That's going to be, or I guess it'd be 4 games. That's going to be incredible if somebody pulls that off. I mean, here are the Cincinnati Bengals 2 years ago. They lost to the Cleveland Browns twice during the regular season, and they had a lead in the Super Bowl in the final minute and very nearly won it. Do you think anybody would have cared that they lost to the Browns twice if they broke through and won the Super Bowl? Hell no. So I know Browns-Bengals is nowhere near the rivalry Ohio State-Michigan is, but, and I'm not trying to denigrate the rivalry, downgrade the rivalry, or anything. I'm just trying to put things in the proper perspective. It is March 22nd. The year is 2023. It is not 1974. So I think we have to kind of move into the modern era, and taking shots at Ryan Day, ain't going to get it with me, because the guy's been a head coach for 4 years and has been in the Final Four 3 of the 4 years. Um, you know, uh, had a team, if the defense was any better, they would have won the national championship last year. So I don't think they had the best team in 2019 or 2020, but, certainly one of the top teams, all 4 of his years.
Yeah, everything you just laid out about the playoff format and how that's going to completely change the perception and the reality of the regular season is true. The only two things I would say about the continued relevance of the regular season, and of course it's relevant. You can't be 7-5 and make the playoffs. You have to have a reasonably good season, but that's not a concern for Ohio State based on what the program's been for the last 20 years and really the last 50 years. But you would think most of the time that the better team in the regular season will continue to be the better team in the playoffs, number one. Number two, of course, the Big Ten champion, the conference champion, will have the advantage of the bye and the one less game versus a team.
Definitely.
But we will probably have a narrative for certain teams, if we could spin ahead 15 years where there is going to be a school out there that is going to build some level of reputation for, they've sneaked into the playoffs like 5 times and they won 2 national championships when they weren't supposed to. And then we've got so-and-so dominating some conference, Clemson. They've won 11 ACC championships and they keep losing in the second round of something like that. There will be outliers like that will drive home the point that the playoffs, the value of the playoffs and the ability to either ascend or have a great regular season torn to shreds in 60 minutes or 3 hours is going to be there on the table.
Yeah, in the past 15 years, you've had, I think, Connecticut and Villanova both won 2 NCAA basketball championships, and neither played, I guess as it gets later on, the Big East has become a little bit more of a power conference, but, I don't think it was regarded that way previously, and certainly American wasn't. So, some of that, it kind of dovetails into a discussion that Day got into yesterday about the future of Big Ten scheduling. It sounds like the coaches are trying to give the athletic directors and the presidents their input on where things should go when you add USC and UCLA starting in 2024. It sounds like they're going to dissolve the divisions, and it'll just be the top 2 teams at the end of the year that will play in the championship game. And they're struggling, I think, right now with what the proper format will be for protected rivals and, how that's going to look. Do you protect 2? Do you protect 3? Or do some schools protect 1 and some schools protect 3? And, you're kind of all over the board on this. Where it could end up. I guess they'll probably end up landing on Protect 2, which for Ohio State would be Penn State and Michigan, I have to think. But you are also going to play USC and UCLA with relative regularity. So really interested to see how that's going to go. And, that's going to have a big determinant, I think, in the future of the Big Ten, because I think anytime you mix in a road trip to the West Coast in October or November, I think you almost have to have a bye week after that to recover in the course of the league. And so we're going to be interested to see how they manage doing all of that. Those schools on the West Coast have to come east for at least, you'd think, 3 or 4 games a year to the Central and Eastern time zones. What's the wear and tear going to be on those teams? Are they going to be expected to, to win a Big Ten championship, with 3 tough road trips every year? So, yeah, I'm interested to see how this is all going to shake out.
I like the idea of determining for each program, how many rivals do you have? How many true rivals do you have? And if we protect 3 games, 3 opponents for one school and only one for another, that's fine because we are protecting the games that need to be played. It makes for a little bit more of a wonky schedule. I do understand the advantage in uniformity to say everybody's got 2 or 3 set opponents, and then the rest of it can be worked out more in a regiment. But not every school has the same number of quote unquote true rivals. But the good thing about it is for whoever's going to get bent out of shape over who is assigned to Ohio State or any team, there's going to be a regular churn of the whether it's just dividing the rest of the league and saying you play this group in odd years and this group in even years, and it's just set like that, and you're playing everybody at least every other year. At least there's going to be more uniformity to it and more consistent play against everyone. So warning to all the Big Ten Western Division teams, because you better go for the gusto this year, because it's going to be mighty difficult to play for the brass ring going forward. Kirk Ferentz and others.
Yeah, no doubt.
So you're headed to Pro Day. I don't know. I don't remember the number of Buckeyes that made it to the NFL Combine, but obviously that's a little bit more restricted as opposed to, I believe, 16 are going to make it here to Pro Day.
Yeah, they had 8 players at the Combine, which was C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba, 3 offensive linemen with Luke Whippler, Paris Johnson, and DeJuan Jones, then just 3 guys over on defense. Zach Harrison, the defensive end, and the cornerback, Cameron Brown, and the safety, Ronnie Hickman. And it was interesting, at the Combine, Cameron Brown was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to run a 4.240. And then he didn't run and he didn't even work out. And it's kind of like, boy, you're pinning a lot. You're a late round pick to begin with, and now you're pinning a lot on the Pro Day. You better really show out at the Pro Day. And C.J. Stroud will have the benefit of throwing, obviously, to Jackson Smith-Njigba, but also to some of the current Ohio State players who will be participating. Marvin Harrison Jr., the guys who are healthy, Jaden Ballard and Cade Stover will be there. So those will be the guys that he's throwing to during the Pro Day today. And I think that there'll be some others that are there. Teron Vincent, defensive tackle, I think will be working out. I think it's a total of 14 guys from Ohio State working out. Xavier Johnson will be catching passes as well as a current player. So that's kind of a cool thing that those guys will. And C.J. Stroud last year got to throw to Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. So this will not be a new thing for him to go through this workout today at Ohio State. As we said, NFL Network with their online service, NFL Network Plus, is going to stream the workout today. And as I said, I assume they and ESPN will have cut-ins throughout the day with some snippets and different things. But, he killed it at the Combine. He threw at the Combine and did really well. And my guess is he'll do more of the same here today at the Woody Hayes Center.
And, of course, it's kind of become the recent norm. NFL scouts will get a look at those Ohio State players that will be in the next year's NFL draft and kind of get an early look at a few players that are going to support CJ, Marvin Harrison, etc. They'll be showing up, I understand, as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And as we said, it'll be a zoo over there today. 30 of the 32 teams are going to be represented. Not sure who the 2 teams are that won't be there. In Carolina coming up to assess C.J. Stroud to see whether he should be their number 1 overall pick. They traded up for that pick. So, want to see if he's the guy that they're going to make that investment in. And I think one of the guys from CBS now has 4 Ohio State guys in the first round with Stroud, Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones, and Jackson Smith-Njigba going in the first round. I think that Whippler and Harrison will be mid-round, second or third round picks, and then you kind of go down from there. So, I think there's a lot on the line there today, and Stroud to me, possibly he can submit himself as the number 1 overall pick if he does well here today.
Folks, please hit the like button on your way out. Understand we've got an Oklahoma show coming up on the Sooners channel at 12:30 Eastern. I'm sure, Steve, I'm guessing that based on your activities today, that we'll have a look at Pro Day on Bucknuts here in the next day or so.
Yeah, Patrick Murphy and myself will be there. We're going to be posting photos and videos and hopefully some interviews with some of the guys after they're done with their workouts. And again, this is what these guys have trained so hard for 20 years, 19, 20, 21 years, whatever it is, to put themselves in this position to jump off and go to the National Football League and set themselves up, financially for life. And, I was talking, with my wife this morning. We were like, oh, Carolina's got the number 1 pick, and, they haven't been very good in recent years. And it's kind of like Justin Fields went to Chicago, and they haven't been very good in recent years. And you just hope that wherever he ends up, he can be surrounded by people that will help him make the most of his NFL career. So that's what everybody's hoping to accomplish.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's better to be Pat Mahomes or Deshaun Watson and drop to 13 or 15 in the draft and be surrounded by a decent organization and team. But, we've seen that situation play out a number of times. Steve, I want to thank you for being here basically every week for about 4 years, and then also posting these on Bucknuts. So thank you so much for that, for being here and supporting and your great contributions. So I hope
when we get together, when we get together next week, we're going to know a lot more about Ohio State spring football, because we're going to be able to attend a scrimmage on Saturday, and that will give us a little bit more insight as to what direction things are headed, I think, for Ohio State in 2023. So definitely next week's show is going to be a can't miss show, because I think between Tony, Kevin, and myself, we're going to be loaded with facts, figures, and opinions on what we saw on Saturday. So stop on by.
Hear that, folks? You got the edict from Steve. All right, sir. Have a nice day out at the complex.
Oh, yeah. Should be a lot of fun.
We'll see everybody here next week.